Hey, let's talk about the story Catch Me If You Can. It's a story of a guy who essentially faked his entire life. At one point during his life, he was pretending to be an airline pilot. He even at one point developed an entire airline crew, and yes, he even flew a jumbo jet for a big airliner full of passengers. Yep, that actually happened. At one point, he was pretending he was a doctor and worked in a hospital, and the hospital staff believed he was a real doctor. At one point, Frank Abagnale decided to be a college professor. Go figure. This man's life was an exciting journey to read about. How he was constantly moving from one thing to another and constantly able to pull off really an incredible heist. He, as best I can tell, had essentially accumulated millions of dollars under false pretenses and writing bad checks over and over again and never being caught. So he lived this life, multiple essentially like personalities, multiple careers, all made up, none of it real, and it worked for him. This story is absolutely fascinating to follow him on the journey, and he walks you from how he got started through the different careers that he did up until the end of the book. So I highly recommend this story. I mean, it was a story that every time I picked this book up, I couldn't put it down. I would read a chapter and just really want to continue into the next chapter. And then I really wanted to continue into the next chapter. This book actually kind of broke some of my rules of reading. I'm typically reading about 5 books at a time, and I usually read 1 to 2 chapters in a book, read another book, read another book, read another book, then circle back and start this book again until I get all the way through the book. But this book, I broke my own rules and I read multiple chapters in a row without switching out to another book. So it really captivated my attention, and it was just so fun in a way to see what this guy was doing and how he was getting away with it. The scenery that I would imagine as he was pulling all of these different things off just made for an enjoyable read. He's a great storyteller, and I think he did a really good job of trying to be truthful about the fake life he was living. So overall, I really do recommend Catch Me If You Can. I hope this is helpful for you to decide whether or not reading Catch Me If You Can is a good book for you. It was a good book for me, but now it's time, sadly, for me to move on to the next book. And he does have a sequel to this, so I figure I will be reading that at some point, but that's not currently the next on my TBR list.